other members. Stephen Selps is...
He's watching on television right now. He's got a court date at 11 o'clock. He was hoping to join us, but was just informed by email that he's going to be in court.
Okay, great. So, I mean, we'd always like to have Stephen with us, but,
He's here in spirit.
We understand. So Karen has provided the Budget Committee and all BET members a copy of a proposed draft of all the budget resolutions intended for our budget book. Karen, there was a revision or something that you sent this morning. You told us to look at this version, not the other version, just for some of us who might have marked up.
There are printed copies.
No. I have this one, but I just was wondering is there a variation between the one last night and this morning, and if so, if you could just tell us so that we know where to look.
Yeah, this morning I was informed by Roland at 6 in the morning. Thank you, Roland. That we are going to be considering sewer improvement bonding.
Right.
So the latest version that I mailed out at 7 o'clock in the morning includes that bonding resolution.
Okay, great. Thank you. So we'll get to that then. So so this incorporates two different aspects of the Law Committee's review of this, and this is your recommendation that these changes or whatever additions, corrections. And then I assume that, I'm assuming something, that Stephen also supports the addition of the bonding resolution for the sewer improvement fund, and any changes that you have made there have been communicated back and forth. So.
I didn't actually, I just mailed it out to everybody this morning. Okay. I didn't think that at 6 in the morning, Stephen might necessarily be awake.
Okay.
The bonding resolution for the sewer improvement is a carbon copy of what was presented to us a few years ago. We didn't have a bonding resolution last year, as you know, with the exception of some minor edits, and they're just basically cosmetic edits, and then the number will be filled in once we know that amount.
Okay, great. So, I mean, the only reason I bring it up is because it's now part of the whole thing. So, should we just go through page by page? So, obviously we have some changes of dates. I see a new budget resolution now called resolution number 11 on page 2. And so that resolution is about the opioid litigation and settlement, and then the funds coming into the town. So my first question is, does anyone have any questions? I have a question. So Karen, can you explain to us, or, why 11 is, because I've looked at all of them in whole, why is this the first selectman pursuant to any state, rather than most of our resolutions say the town, capital T. And why is this one the first selectman rather than the town, capital T?
These settlement, there's more than one settlement, actually. We just got a word that there's an additional settlement. So we've tried to make this globally to apply to any opioid settlement, which is why we've used this particular one, because we have the most information as the example. But the way that these settlements have been written, it's the head of the town or the municipality needs to accept the grant, or the settlement amount, rather, and then come up with the distribution list. So, quite frankly, Demetria Nelson, who is our Commissioner of Human Services, has played an integral part in all of this, and she will be meeting with Ben Branyan to determine the list that will eventually come to the BET and the RTM for approval. So it's just a mechanical thing that is a requirement by the settlement papers that the head of the municipality has to accept the settlement on behalf of the town. So
I'm just going to make one more comment here, that I have suggested that Demetria also work with the schools, as she is, considering how the money needs to be allocated across the town, because obviously the schools are working on these issues too, and just to make sure that they're not forgotten people at the table.
And I know that we've had many discussions with her. This has been a year-long thing. We had, I think, one acceptance. We wanted to see, what the procedure was, which is why we did not include a resolution earlier this year. So I think she has a good feel for what kind of things that they'll be looking for. But obviously, it will come to us, and we'd be more, we would have the opportunity to discuss it with her as well.
Right. I mean, I'd rather have this, since it's quote, quote, the first selectman now, rather than, and as you point out, with the town administrator working on this with the department head or human services.
And I
They
think
come
she's
in order
listening, so
rather
I'm
than
sure
get-
she's hearing this.
I'm sorry?
I think she's listening this morning, so I'm sure she's hearing
They
this.
come in order rather than just,
Right.
us, So, any other questions?
I just had one question. This is, the way it's written, it's for one specific case?
No, it's not. If you look at this, it's authorized to accept funds in the multi-district styled, and I think there's missing an in the in. So in other words, this is used as the example, but it's meant to be global. Again, this was suggested language by Stephen, so I didn't alter it at all, but it's styled in.
Is there any need to mention the case? Why wouldn't just?
Well,
in the
because,
multi-district litigation, litigations?
We wanted to make the point that this is that that this is one of the cases and that there may be others. I do think that it's important that it be there. I initially had it in parentheses, such as.
For me, it had the opposite impact. And granted, I'm reading every word carefully, but it sounded like it was limited to that particular.
No, I think the operative word is styled.
I was going to ask the same question, and I was going to ask a very specific question, saying I thought it was just referring to that one case and why, because it was in Ohio, were we subject to receiving those funds? And I was going to ask you how much of the funds we were going to receive from this one settlement case.
And we've got 230 RTM members. I just think it's confusing for those of us that are not used to.
I think now that you
that
mentioned
kind of
style,
language.
I think I understand what you're saying.
How about styled in the manner of?
Is that case really?
Well, it is the definitive case right now, although, as I said, we just heard yesterday from Valerie, Town Attorney Valerie Mays, that there is an additional one that has come in. And the reason it's in Ohio is that this was a multi-district and multi-state litigation. Connecticut opted to join in. Greenwich also opted to join in the settlement. So, a lot of these cases are going to come from other jurisdictions other than Connecticut.
Could you say something like from opioid settlements, including and I would say interstate instead of multi-district, what you just said, because multi-district
Well,
to me, I don't know.
it's a legal distinction. It's multi-district, so I
Okay. But
Yes.
I had the same confusion, but you decide whatever you want,
It's
right?
just-
Okay.
So I think.
I'll take that under advisement. and
So
we'll-
I think that what I've heard here is, if you could just go back and look at this one, just listening to these comments, whether it's
Yeah,
the
we'll
use
take
of
it under
town
advisement.
versus first selectman, whether it's some of the other things.
It's not the town, Leslie, it's the
Okay.
first selectman, trust me.
Yes, Laura.
So I have a question on this and some of the other resolutions, a more global comment. So in this one, it says in the last clause, upon approval by the BET and the representative town meeting. Why wouldn't we just have the requirement be that the BET appropriate the funds that are coming in? If the point of the resolution is to allocate the funds the way this committee setting up that's being chaired by Demetria, why wouldn't we, the whole point of the resolution is to accept the funds and disperse them.
I
Why do we
think the
need RTM
history is
approval?
that when there's multi-department distributions, that the RTM has been involved. It's similar
Then
to,
why do we need a resolution?
well, again,
Because accept the
we
funds.
need something to accept it. The first selectman has to be authorized to accept the monies.
What's the range of funds that we're talking about? Do you have any idea?
I honestly, I had those numbers, but I don't have them here. I don't know the full amount.
Would Pete know, or Roland have any idea what these funds might be?
I think we already got 24,000.
Yeah, and it's going to be more.
19 years?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah.
It's going to be for the next 19 years, yeah.
So then my global comment is, I know, and this isn't new language, but, you know, every once in a while we say we really should look at these, like, and do an overhaul. But in all this, like, first resolution, for example, when we talk about Article 2, Section 30C of the Charter, that's the $5,000 limit, right? So what we're saying is if it's over 5,000 or greater, it has to go to the RTM. Is that what that means?
Yeah, I mean, anything that requires representative town meeting would only, if it meets the threshold.
So
I mean,
my global point is the resolutions, my understanding were so everyone understood these were sources of funds, so you don't have to go to the RTM.
No, that's not necessarily true, because there are if you look at some of these resolutions, it does require both.
Yeah, I guess,
I mean,
I feel like we should be making it easier, and I feel like just because it's 5,000.
I mean, we could always take it out and let the RTM decide to add it in. I mean,
there may be-
you know.
So Roland
I
wants
just
to
want to
speak.
clarify the
Ro-
5,000.
I'm sorry, Roland, I didn't,
Okay, I just want to clarify the $5,000 limit. Gifts and grants have no limit for the RTM. It's the $1 that they have to approve.
That's true.
The $5,000 limit comes in how much the BET can appropriate without RTM approval. So if a department comes in and said, I need $3,000 for overtime,
Right.
the BET can approve it. If it's more than 5, it goes to the RTM. But their gift grant policy is $1 that needs their approval. There's no.
Unless it's covered by a resolution.
But
Unless
that's
it's covered
that's
by
their approval
resolution.
then, right, that becomes their approval for the.
but I mean, I agree with Karen, there's, you know, we've got quite a few of them here. I mean, I'm going to take the advice of the law committee, but Karen can take your comment under advisement along with the other comments that we've had so far on this new resolution number 11.
Okay.
Okay, so going on here, so that's page 2. Looking at page 3, they're just numbering as a result of that last resolution.
Correct.
Just to note, on page 1, you're missing a space between 6 and 7.
Oh, that's because it originally didn't go to the next page, so, well, I'll take care of that one.
Okay. So I'm
The
just.
next change is number
Oh,
38.
I just wanted to go through and make sure people don't have comments on any of that. So page number 3, there's, you know, page number 4, any chances? Change number 5, page number 5.
Are they numbered pages?
No, but you can figure that one out. with them. Page number 6, we have our number 38 is a new one. Karen, do you want to?
Yes, it is. If you're not aware, there is a 5-cent surcharge on what are called NIPs, which are beverage containers containing spirits or liquor up to 50 milliliters. And every April and October, our wholesalers that sell these must remit us the surcharge of 5 cents for each NIP sale, for each NIP sold in each municipality, where one was sold during the previous 6 months. So in other words, if 50,000 NIPs were sold in Greenwich, then we would get revenue off of the 50,000 times 5 cent surcharge. The wholesaler has to file a report with the Revenue Services and Consumer Protection Departments on the number of NIPs during the 6-month period, and then we receive funds for use for, and the statute is pretty specific, for environmental efforts to reduce the amount of solid waste generated in the municipality or to the impact of litter. And these efforts can include such things as hiring a recycling coordinator, installing storm drain filters to block debris, or buying a mechanical street sweeper, vacuum, or broom to remove litter from streets, sidewalks, and abutting lawn and turf areas. The original, just so you know, and we can put this in context, the city of New Haven received $190,000 in 2 payments for the sale of NIPS. Greenwich received between October 21st to September 30th, $10,775.02. So we don't seem to be selling a lot of NIPS in Greenwich, but we do have some revenue coming in.
So Pete, is that what you're seeing coming into the town? 10,000? I thought it was more than that. Didn't we get a second one?
That's
Yes,
between,
that's the total. It comes every April and October.
right, April 1st and October 1st.
Yeah, there's, what, if I may, can I?
Yes, certainly,
there's
Pete.
The controversy that arose last September, I think it was, or, the Conservation Commission came forward.
I'm getting to that, so let me,
okay.
let me address it, please. Okay. All right, so initially, the Conservation Commission came in to request the monies, and apparently there was a meeting between DPW, Ben Branyan, and the Conservation Commission, and the idea was that they would use the 10,000 for education, their educational efforts on litter, et cetera. Had conversations with our law department, and both the two lawyers on the law committee agree that the way that it's written is that it has to be used for environmental efforts to reduce the amount of solid waste generated and impact of litter. So educational purposes would not fall under this statute. It would have to be used for things like a broom to sweep or cover for the,
Can I just?
Yes.
I don't mean to interrupt you, but the language, because it's environmental measures to reduce municipal solid waste, including but not limited to the items that you referred to.
I know,
Is
but
that
the
correct?
environmental efforts is the key. It's not educational efforts, it's actual environmental efforts. So environmental efforts denotes something that you're doing to the environment to reduce the level of,
Like reducing food waste in the schools is an acceptable use.
I don't know if that would necessarily, it could. I mean, I think we'd have to look at that. But I think what they're looking at more, and I would have to go back to the enabling legislation really to parse that out, is that they're looking at physical things to reduce the impact on the environment. When they're using those examples, they're giving you examples of the environmental, of what they're envisioning that it be used for.
Yeah, I would respectfully submit that the including but limited to language gives us a little more leeway in the amount of money that we're talking about.
I
is not
no, I don't
gonna-
disagree with
yeah.
you, but I think we need to be careful about how we parse it, and that's why I said I'll go back and look at the enabling
Can I
legislation.
make a suggestion, which would be not including DPW specifically, but you can say, used upon designation by the first selectman, and, leave it available for our departments, but give them time to clarify uses and use it where it's appropriate. I mean, what we heard from DPW last time is $10,000, or it was less than $10,000, is difficult for them to utilize, and they supported the educational use. And if it's, that may continue in the future, I don't know, but I think that the resolution can be more broadly worded.
Can it be used?
So I would like to speak to that point, though. I actually think it's appropriate here. She may not think 10,000 is appropriate, but she has spoken to us several times
Who's
about the Commissioner of Public Works about needing, people there, and she's only using light duty. So whether this could be used for overtime or, hiring part-time people for the for recycling, as an example, or whatever, with the garbage collection area, wherever it is, I think would be, it's not a lot of money, but we keep hearing that, it's totally missing coverage at certain points in time. So,
But that has less direct limiting of solid waste. So, again, we're
well, I
talking
think
about
it's
the
how
use.
much
No,
is coming in, turning people around.
It doesn't necessarily only apply to solid waste. It's environmental efforts to reduce either the impact of litter or the amount of solid waste generated. So again, you can use $10,000 to buy a broom to remove litter, or to put a little cap on storm drains to prevent litter from getting into the storm drains. I mean, there are things that you can use this for from the DPW. I think we felt it belonged in Department of Public Works because of the, and again, it's because of what was envisioned in the legislation, even though it's not an exclusive list. But it was things like installing a storm drain filter or to block debris or something like that.
You're making an allocation decision, which I think is really, we had this discussion and disagreement over the first NIP settlement, and I would support broader language here.
And I'm hearing
so
you.
it can be.
I'm hearing you.
Actually, I would move this whole section to under the Finance Department. The comptroller is authorized to accept the proceeds, and such proceeds can be used to strike out the Department of Public Works for environmental efforts, and keep the rest.
Well, you need to give it to somebody, because he's not going to make the decision, so.
Well, we're talking about $10,000. I'm pretty
Yeah, but
comfortable.
it's 10,000 now. I don't know if NIPS are
Well,
going to
then
increase
maybe
or.
we, again, I don't want to overthink this. I think we're really in the weeds on this. He could report in his comptroller's report, and then if we decide that it meets the threshold that needs further attention down the road, I'm happy to revisit it.
I don't agree with that the controller is going to be making
No, I think
the
it's, yeah.
decisions.
Well, the appropriation is still approved by the BET.
Again,
so-
I don't think he's in the position to make a decision on where this is going to be used for environmental efforts to reduce the amount of solid waste
So what I'm saying
and
is
the impact of litter.
I don't think it's necessarily Department of Public Works either. It could be the Conservation Commission. It could be the schools. I don't know. It could be the town clerk. I mean, I don't know. It could be anything.
I think this came out of the law committee this way, and
But
so
it was
Karen
not-
has listened to people's comments, and she's going to go back, I assume, and, consider
talk
just
about
like
it.
the previous one.
Can I just add, can I add a comment?
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't see you.
No, that's okay. I think this is appropriately written. I was just going to ask if it's possible to reduce the budget versus creating an addition. Is it above and beyond what's already being done? The question being, if we already have, let's say, $10,000 environmental effort to reduce waste within the DPW, let's say there is already a line item or something that's being done, can we utilize it to reduce what's already being done? Or is it above and beyond that you must create a new program?
Yes,
I
because it
don't
goes
see
into
why
the
not.
general fund.
Right, so then I think
You go
this-
to the general fund, and then you can reduce it accordingly.
because I think that gives us also, as a town, more flexibility to, for example, Laura, if there was an additional effort by the Conservation Commission to, do X, Y, Z, I think it's still appropriate for them to come through and ask for that request. I don't think it should be given to any department. So I think the way it's written is appropriately written. Yeah. Okay.
I mean, that would be
Okay.
an interim appropriation if they would.
I don't think when you get funds, it should be always used as an opportunity to create a program that we may or may not need, right? If there's a true need for a program, you should come and make the request for it, not, well, we have extra money, let's figure out how to spend it. It's just a different philosophy on spending. So I think this is appropriately written. It'll give us the ability to either A, reduce the budget, or B, potentially create an extra program that we may or may not need.
And I support the way it's written.
I mean,
But
I don't
we've
want to
already told
interrupt.
Karen to look at it with her law committee, so
I just want to make one additional point, because Pete alluded to a controversy. I don't know if it was
There was no
really that
controversy.
controversial. I wouldn't use that
No.
turn of phrase.
By the way, we're not being recorded because the Office of First Selectman is on right now. So,
Oh, right, of course, the Board of Selectmen gets first dibs. That's totally understandable.
so there you go.
But I just think that, the effort that came before us and was appropriated by the BET was an effort for a small sum of money to do a pilot program at a school to reduce food waste, and it's resulted in a almost 50% reduction in solid waste. So I just think, let's keep our eye on the bigger picture. If we're trying to reduce our costs and reduce municipal solid waste, we need to be able to do programs like that. And I mean, I was at the law committee meeting when Amy was there, and also when Ben was there at a separate meeting. They're not asking for this resolution. So
So Laura, I've supported that program that came out of that high school program, and the comment I'm making is, I can still support that program independent of being forced to say, well, this is the money that's coming in, and I must figure out you can still support the environment and environmental programs without having a forced down, well, here's some money coming in, and figure out where you want to allocate it. If it's a good cause and there's a good reason being given, we're going to support it, right? So I don't think it's related. I think it's just, they got to keep them independent. Again, it's not, I think we're overanalyzing this particular topic, but
But, again, I just find it, I think the fact that we talked about the funds could also be used, the general fund, to just go through to the departments. But,
No, I mean, it has to be
but-
designated for something, so, anyway, we'll take a look at it.
Right, and when, it's unfortunate that those schools who have a budget of 100 and, what is it now, folks? With benefits, $225 million for the schools, that they can't figure out how to handle their waste in their cafeterias?
Leslie, I think that comment is really not well taken.
Well, only because you kept pursuing it and I
Okay,
wouldn't have
can we
made it
move on?
otherwise.
I think I've got the message. I understand what
We're not
you're
television.
looking for, and we will talk about it in the law committee with
Right.
the town attorney. But the town attorney did believe that it cannot be used for educational purposes per se, that it has to be used for some sort of program that will do the functions that we have before us.
So, just
And
go.
where it will lie, we'll figure out.
Sorry about that, Karen.
No problem.
So, now I've gone on and, the next page, I've lost track of pages. Leslie's at 7, and then on 8 is our next, is there no comments on page 7? Okay.
You have to do the numbers, Leslie.
Page 8, which is where we have, well, I can tell you that,
Number 44.
41 is page 7.
44J.
And so the next one we have is it 44J?
44J, correct.
Page 8?
Yes, we had a meeting with Blaze yesterday. This was being requested by the Board of Ed. Currently, they're not ticketing athletic events. However, the director of athletic events came to Blaze and asked that they be able to start ticketing for crowd control and the championship games only. They anticipate about $12,000 in revenue, and this would enable them to hire ticketing people, and also the revenue generated for ticketing could be used for the crowd control, as I said, and other things. The excess revenue, he felt, could go back to the general fund, that this is really meant only to cover the cost of the events. And again, it would be just specifically for championship games and other athletic events related to championship games. That's how they envision it currently. So we, again, and Blaze was okay with this particular resolution. And again, we had the controller add the revenue collected in excess of the approved costs go back to the general fund. And we did ask initially for an annual report itemizing the revenue and expenditures so that we can get a handle on what was going on. And again, this could eventually drop off. The reporting can eventually drop off, but Blaze actually felt it was a good idea.
So, Pete?
Yes, sir.
Through you,
No.
the first question is do they collect any revenue from any other events?
We did ask that question, and no, they don't currently charge for student plays, for example. The other things, if it's an outside event, like the Greenwich Symphony, they pay a fee to cover labor, costs of software, electric costs. They actually are not gaining money on this. They're actually losing money because of the electricity costs, is how it was explained to us. If they do get donations, for example, they might have a bucket for donations for student plays outside the door. That money goes directly into the student club activity fund for use by that club or that, to cover expenses.
That's exactly why I'm asking. There's a fund called, I'm sorry?
Exactly right. Sorry, I'm agreeing with you.
There's a fund called Student Activities.
Right.
It generates almost $1 million in receipts and almost $1 million in expenses. I don't know if This is the first I'm hearing of it, and I don't know if I agree with Lays that this should go back to the general fund. I think it probably belongs to the student, whoever's associated with the student activity fund. And if I could just research it a little bit, the student activity fund is a brand-new fund that we put into Munis, and it goes into the financial report. Before it was an agency fund, it's now called a special revenue fund, but I think it needs a little bit more research. And just the final question is crowd control police overtime?
It could be, yes.
Their security over time.
I just.
Yeah, again, he wasn't specific, but it could be,
Can I
yeah,
research?
it
Or
could be
renting
there.
of.
Right,
Renting of equipment,
Right.
or it could be a lot of
Right.
things.
Okay, can I just research this one a little bit more and get back to Karen
Sure.
and Stephen?
Yeah, you just copy us, so since we're talking about it in
Oh,
public.
of course, yeah.
But no, get back to them. As
The
we're-
only area I really disagree with is I think it doesn't belong to the general fund. That's all.
okay, that's
yeah,
fine.
But that, but
I view this as the same as the rental of facilities. And in that one, which is number E, if they rent a facility out, a room, they charge for that room, and then they use that revenue to pay for the custodians,
Right,
whatever else, which is number E. I thought it would be more like that.
so Roland, what you're saying is, and it is in the general fund in that case.
So,
I mean, it could be plus or minus in the general fund. I mean, what we heard, just to, comment, I mean, Karen said the Greenwich Symphony, but what we heard on their outside events and rental of their rooms is they have been losing money under the current environment because of utility costs. And so they're going to reassess that, and then they're going to raise the rates. So in that case, it's a plus or minus to the general fund. So I would say to Pete that and that money is going into the general fund. I would say that therefore this should be in the general fund.
No, it's student activity. My point is, this is student
I know it's a
activities.
moot point, but, we wanted to cover the bases
sorry?
just in case.
I disagree. I don't think E involves students. I think J is
But-
specific to student activities.
No, I mean, Pete, I disagree with that. It could, for example, they have the jazz competition.
But
And,
this is limited to athletic events, right?
yeah, this one is particularly athletic events. But I'm just saying is that they do have student activities where they might have outside people coming in and there might be a rental cost.
So I think the interesting thing is, this wasn't initiated by the BET. This was
Right.
initiated by the chief operating, or whatever is, the chief operations officers of the schools who thought we needed this. He has a perspective on what our budget resolutions are, including the one you've mentioned. I think it's appropriate just to, come back to him and
Well,
and
he
make
had no
sure-
problem, I mean, we went
he's
through
the one-
this particular one and this wording, and he did not have an issue with it, so. But I'll be more than happy to listen to what you have to say, Pete.
Actually, no, since Blaze is sponsoring this resolution, I'll defer to him.
Okay.
I can't hear you.
Why don't you talk to Blaze at least
Well,
before
why
you?
don't you coordinate with Karen and talk to him?
I mean, Blaze has done a phenomenal job.
Right.
He might not be aware of the Student Activity Fund. He might be 100% aware of it.
Oh,
He's
he was
brand new.
aware of it because he did mention it, so.
Okay, and I'll defer to Blaze.
The only, not to add on, this is a small item, but I don't want to add an administrative burden in collecting the costs and verifying
He
the
had no
costs and
problems with it.
revenue and.
He had no problems with it. We asked him
But
specifically.
we're asking the finance department to do something too. So, I just don't know.
It's a report. I don't think that it's going to impact greatly the workload, quite frankly. I mean, we're not asking for 54 reports from the department.
And-
And we can get to the reports next.
And only now are we beginning to have some discipline on our reports. Right, Adam?
Right.
Okay, so one would never think that we would spend so much time on budget resolutions. Okay, so the next page, top to page 40, number 46, and then the following page, which begins budget resolution 54 there are substantial changes, and that is for the reason, Karen, that the original, we're sort of past the
Okay, let
COVID,
me-
but you're keeping these here because there might be some changes of follow-on money?
If I might, yes. We did hear from the federal government that as of May 11th, they're going to be rescinding the emergency orders, and that basically grant funding will be going away. However, listening to comments made by you, Leslie, and by others on the BET Budget Committee, we did revise them to allow for, if monies happen to become available, to come in and be approved by. And again, this is both the BET and the RTM because it was patterned after the other resolution that we're deleting. When we spoke to Blaze, he did say that there was another ESSER tranche, but that will be done in this budget cycle, so it will be covered by this resolution. So he did not see any problems with the Board of Ed aspect of it.
I just want to raise a point because requires RTM authorization. So the current ESSER 3 funding, which is part of ARP, they're going to go to the RTM either with the budget or separate from the budget. I'm not sure that's yet been determined. But as there are changes in allocation, for example, let me ask a question about the town side. We're expecting if we change an appropriation from one project to a different project that we would need to return to the RTM to get authorization for that modification. So, so if this resolution were to change, I don't know whether it's prospective only for new grants and that any authorizations under old grants have to follow that resolution. And the reason I'm raising this point is because I think the one area that this board didn't appropriately draft this is that some of the ESSER, the rules regarding ESSER gave the Board of Education more authority than the town had in allocating funds, such that a town did not always have the ability to modify a Board of Ed recommendation. We know that like for certified staff on an operating budget, the town budget, that the Board of Ed has the flexibility to determine how to use their allocations to properly educate kids. When it came to the ESSER funding, this all came up very suddenly. There was a lot of not clear information, but I believe the information was gotten from the State Board of Education that the ESSER funding, again, was within the control of the Board of Education. And I don't know if you had further conversations about that, but this might be the right time to rectify the language here that that it's not really approval, it's an appropriation that that doesn't require, certainly not the RTM approval, and I would say that probably not the BET approval. And that information-wise, maybe we want to see it, but I'm not sure we have the right for approval.
Well, you're talking about basically this year's resolution that we would have to modify and go back and have
We have to
approval
change
for.
it next year. Does it fall under what we've currently written? Or?
I mean, I think, first of all, we've gotten the monies in, is that correct?
The Board of Ed is on a reimbursement basis, isn't it? Yeah.
ARP is prepaid and ESSER is the opposite. It's all reimbursement.
Yeah.
So again, I think that the way that this is currently written, we're authorized to apply for and accept funds, where the Board of Ed is authorized to apply for and accept funds under federal and state regulations related to COVID-19.
So Leslie, can you, help us understand if you were to redraft this the way you're talking about, what are you suggesting?
So as I understand what the State Board of Education's advice was to the Board of Education, to our town's Board of Education, it would say, and such funds shall be, I'm looking at comparable language, shall be placed in the proper accounts. So it doesn't include an approval doesn't include an approval aspect, just placing in the right accounts for the Board of Ed money.
So that it wouldn't come to the BET and it wouldn't come to the RTM? I'm confused.
Not for approval. We can ask that it be given to the BET on an
I haven't
information
seen
basis.
that state BOE advice, so if you have an email or information that you can share, that would be helpful. I don't know what
follow
you're
up with-
referring to, but you obviously have more information than we had, so I would ask that you share that information.
And that concerns me that they would get just money coming in without any guidance whatsoever? Is that what you're saying?
I mean, I'm not disputing it, I just want to
Yeah.
see what advice you've given.
Follow up, you
been
can
given.
follow up too with the superintendent, but it was.
I mean, you obviously
my
have more
understanding.
information than I do at this point, so, if you can share that information, that would be helpful.
Nope.
And I think that we should share it with the whole BET too, so,
Laura?
just for transparency.
Karen, I should have
Yes.
started by thanking you and Stephen for all this work. This is one of those
Thank you.
thankless
Yep.
tasks that, we always leave to the last
We
minute.
can
And,
nitpick
we're
to
digging
death.
into it a little more than I
That's fine.
recall from last year. But I did have a question. This is really more a question for Pete. Nathaniel Witherall, I don't think we've done what this resolution had told us to do. I mean, they accepted COVID funds as revenue, and we never appropriated it, correct?
The COVID, theirs was just increase in revenue. There was no appropriation for it. They had their expenses in their budget that were approved. And they just got a higher revenue amount. That,
They got the provide,
they got some of that.
yeah, the answer is yes.
Yes, what?
I'm just wondering if this is an accurate resolution, given actual practice at Nathaniel Witherall. It's just a question, I don't know.
Well, I think you raise a question, I would say the reverse. If they're not following the town process, we need to go back and make sure that we retroactively approve things that
Well,
they've
I
done.
mean, it was from 2019, 2020, right? So they got a bump for COVID relief. It became revenue, it flowed to the bottom line. They had more expenses in some cases for overtime or whatnot, but they certainly didn't come to the BET or the RTM. So I just,
Yeah, but if it's only,
because-
this authorizes the acceptance. And then the other, I mean, quite frankly, just what we heard before.
I mean, maybe it's because it was
If we get grants or anything
budgeted.
in,
it's a two-parter.
the RTM has to
Very end.
approve it.
It's a two-parter. The first part allows them to apply for accept and then put it into the appropriate accounts. The second part is if they do, if you look at the Nathaniel is also authorized to apply for any other grants, and then that would require the approval. So there's a two-part to that particular one. So the Medicare, the Medicaid bump and all that stuff would be put into the appropriate accounts. The other stuff, if they get grants for personal protection or something like that, that would have to come to us.
So actually, I think Laura's point is a good one. I think we need to go back and
I'm not
review
going
the charter as to the acceptance of revenues. It looks to
well,
me that
before-
this were grants,
But hang
and
on,
grants need to
hang
have
on.
approvals.
I mean, I'm saying maybe because we appropriated funds in the normal budgetary process, the
right.
annual budget, they didn't need to come back to us for interims, but
They needed to get they needed to have approval for the acceptance of a grant. You can't
I
just,
think because they're running in a deficit, that's why this works. But if it was actually, and I think you're right, Laura, like if, for example, their revenue was 100 and they spent 80, they got a grant, they'd have to come in for that appropriation. It's just that because they run at a deficit, it just goes into the account, so they just ask for less. So the loss is less at the end of the year. I think you're absolutely correct, though, from a language perspective, it's not being followed the way it's written.
so, right, so the issue here is that their grant should have been approved.
I don't, it's a question.
I'll leave that up to you because you're the budget committee, but I'm not taking that one on.
I don't think it has anything to do with the resolution.
Right.
It's just the following. Yeah.
They don't get access to the money.
And then number E, the town clerk and registrar of voters, wonderful center.
Well, I want to go back to C
C.
before we get to E, please.
CCC.
So C, I think I would suggest some change, just some minor word changes to C. In the third line, Karen,
Yep.
it says incurred in response to, and to make this run parallel with the rest, I would say delete the before
To
COVID-19,
COVID-19.
and I
get
would
rid of
delete the pandemic
Yep, yep.
after.
Okay,
Thank you.
that's fine.
And now we can go to the next one that you're talking about.
That's easy. Center for Tech Life grant, that's being deleted since it doesn't apply anymore. They got their grant and it's done with. And I don't
I've
want to
lost
hear
that
about
page.
Center for Tech Life ever again.
I'm sorry, where are you?
That's
I've
number,
lost that page.
number 40, 54E. That's being deleted
54E.
entirety.
54E.
Okay,
Okay.
the additional provisions, we incorporated the suggestions from the HR committee and changed pension to retirement and added the or on the next page.
That looks good. And the other thing is, we've now incorporated the bands resolution into the
Well,
bonds.
we haven't gotten there yet, Leslie. Give me a chance, okay? I know that you're
Okay.
eager to
No,
give
no.
information,
Oh, I
but
thought
let
you were
me.
going on.
Okay, so the resolution authorizing the issuance of bonds, there were some just minor edits, just to make it consistent. And just to point out, both Leslie and I had a conversation, and she asked me, well, where's the bands resolution? And thank you very much, Roland. He informed us that Section 4 of this resolution now incorporates the bands. So the bonding resolution has both the bonds and the bands. And then the sewage, the sewage improvement, again, it was just some editorials, editing rather, to make it consistent with the other, with the bonding resolution. Added the words "the BET" or other authorized BET member designated by the chairman of the BET. Other than that, the resolution remains the same as when we last used it in 2019.
So can I just ask Pete, Pete, do we normally borrow bands when we do sewer improvement? I mean, is that our process on number one?
Yes, yes, we do. And there's a major difference between these. One is one limits you to 5-year amortization in Section 1, and one allows you to go up to 20 years. So just say, hypothetically, and not sponsoring, or
Right.
let's just say that you wanted to pay Central and you wanted or sewer remediation and go to 10-year bonding, you'd have to redraft that bond resolution.
Right.
And in most, it would probably most likely be retroactive, because you'd only be doing 1-year notes in the next 1, 2, and 3, and 4 years.
Why would you only do 1-year notes?
We usually, except for the current year that we just did, 13
yeah,
months.
yeah.
Notes, if notes are 1 year.
Right.
Okay.
No, okay, now I
No, we
understand.
do in 1 year, they mature, and then we roll them over
right,
before, okay.
Yeah, no, I caught it, a little too late. Yes, Laura?
I just want to ask about Parks and Recreation. I know you met with them. Did they have any suggested changes? You and I talked about the sponsorships and other activities. Are those covered?
I didn't, so
Put it on the list for next
I will
year.
put it on the list. Any other question? So we'll get back to you on, thank you for your suggestions, appreciate it. Heard you loud and clear, and we'll get back to you.
So I have, did there any further comments on the risk fund, or was that, we had comments here yesterday, but, if there's any details, we need to move into executive session. I just want to make sure that, we had a very lengthy conversation here. I'm not suggesting that we need any further, but I just want to.
I have nothing more to add right now.
Okay.
I just also wanted to before I forget, and there was one other thing, the reporting the reports that we've gotten under these resolutions. We talked about possibly doing away with them for some of them, but because it's the first year we've done this, we figured let's give it a few more years and then we can make a decision as to whether or not we need these reports and, you know, what do we do with these reports. But, so we're going to keep them in place, or we're recommending keeping them in place for now, and then we can always address it going forward, you know, and see if a few of them can drop off.
Thank you. Okay, and, you know, so this is great. This is great. So what do we normally do at this point in time?
I move to adjourn.
Leslie does that, but I'll second it.
Well, she was looking at me, so.
Is there a second? Yeah, Nisha seconded. Those in favor, 10:55. So our next meeting is next Tuesday, right, for first day of Consolidation Day, so we look forward to moving to the next step. Thank you.